Today, we bring you an inspiring commencement speech by Shruti Kumar, a Harvard graduate known for her passionate views on civil rights and the power of not knowing. At Harvard's 2024 commencement, Shruti shares her journey from the Great Plains of Nebraska to the esteemed university, highlighting the importance of empathy, humility, and ethical engagement. Her off-script remarks on civil rights and solidarity resonated deeply with the audience, earning her a standing ovation.
Today, we are celebrated for what we know. In fact, for most of our lives, we've learned to feel a sense of accomplishment in the awards, accolades, and honors that line our childhood homes. How much we know and how we leveraged it got us far. It got us here. But today, I want to convince you of something counterintuitive that I've learned from the class of 2024. The power of not knowing. I grew up in the Great Plains of Nebraska, alongside cattle ranches and cornfields. As the eldest daughter of South Asian immigrants, I was the first in my family to attend college here in the US. There was a lot I didn't know. When it came time, I asked my parents how to apply to colleges, and they too said, I don't know. The words, I don't know, used to make me feel powerless, like there was no answer, and therefore no way, as if I was admitting defeat. From Nebraska to Harvard, I found myself redefining this feeling of not knowing. I discovered a newfound power in how much I didn't know. I didn't know a field called the history of science even existed. And I now find myself a graduate of the department. Here, for the first time in my life, I had a professor of color, a historian of science who taught me history is just as much about the stories we don't know as the stories we do. In the history of science, we often look for what is missing, what documents are not in the archives, and whose voices are not captured in history. I've learned silence is rarely empty, often loud. I've learned this not only in the classroom, but also from the class of 2024. In reflecting on our collective moments at Harvard, I've realized it's the moments of uncertainty from which something greater than we could have ever imagined grows. And our class has experienced more than our fair share of the unknown. In our first year, during COVID, we didn't have Annenberg to meet 100 people in an hour and walk out remembering 5 names. What did we do? Hefes became the new Annenberg, and we learned to connect differently, building quality over quantity in our friendships. In our sophomore year, Roe v. Wade was overturned, and there was, and still is, in many parts of the country, an omnipresent uncertainty in accessing reproductive health care. In our junior year, Harvard faced the Supreme Court and the decision to reverse affirmative action. Whether we realize it or not, we've been swimming in uncharted waters. Which brings me to our senior year. A year on campus marked by enormous uncertainty. In the fall, my name and identity, alongside other Black and brown students at Harvard, was publicly targeted. For many of us students of color, doxing left our jobs uncertain, our safety uncertain. This semester, our freedom of speech and our expressions of solidarity became punishable. Leaving our graduations uncertain. As I stand before you today, I must take a moment to recognize my peers, the 13 undergraduates the 13 undergraduates in the class of 2024 who will not graduate today. I am deeply disappointed by the intolerance for freedom of speech and the right to civil disobedience on campus. Over 1,500 students had petitioned. Nearly 500 staff and faculty had spoken up, all overwhelmingly against the unprecedented sanctions. As an American and as a Harvard graduate, for me, what is happening on campus is about liberty. This is about civil rights and upholding democratic principles. The students had spoken. The faculty had spoken. Harvard, do you hear us? Harvard, do you hear us? We are in a moment of intense division and disagreement in our community over the events in Gaza. I see pain, anxiety, and unrest across campus. But it's now, in a moment like this, that the power of not knowing becomes critical. Maybe we don't know what it's like to be ethnically targeted. Maybe we don't know what it's like to come face to face with violence and death. But we don't have to know. Solidarity is not dependent on what we know, because not knowing is an ethical stance. It creates space for empathy, humility, and a willingness to learn. I choose to say, I don't know, so I'm empowered to ask, to listen. I believe an important type of learning takes place, especially in moments of uncertainty, when we lean into conversations without assuming we have all the answers. Can we see the humanity in people we don't know? Can we feel the pain of people with whom we disagree? As we graduate, what we know, our material knowledge, may not matter so much anymore. The truth is, it's what we don't know and how we navigate it that will set us apart moving forward. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, but I encourage you to dive into the deep end of discomfort, engage with the nuances, and bring with you a beginner's mind, an ethic of not knowing. Emily Dickinson had said, "Not knowing when the dawn will come, I open every door." Thank you, and congratulations.
Welcome to another insightful session at English Speeches. Today, we're diving into a powerful speech delivered by Subramaniam Jaishankar, India's Minister for External Affairs, at the 77th session of the UN General Assembly. Discover how India celebrates its 75 years of independence, the visionary steps under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership, and the country's future pledges. Learn how these points connect to broader global issues like multilateralism, environmental care, and international diplomacy.
Madam President, Excellencies, distinguished members of the General Assembly, I bring to you the greetings of 1.3 billion plus people from the world's largest democracy. They join me in congratulating the President of the General Assembly, Ambassador Csaba Kőrösi, on his election to chair the 77th session of the UN General Assembly. They follow closely developments at the United Nations, reflecting the increasingly globalized nature of our existence. We meet at a challenging time for the world order. This session's theme, a watershed moment, transformative solutions to interlocking challenges, seeks to capture its seriousness. Excellencies, the year 2022 is an important milestone in India's journey towards growth, development, and prosperity. India is celebrating 75 years of its independence, what we call Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. The story of that period has been one of toil, of determination, innovation, and enterprise of millions of ordinary Indians. They are rejuvenating a society pillaged by centuries of foreign attacks and colonialism. And they are doing so in a democratic framework whose steady progress is reflected in more authentic voices and grounded leadership. This new India, under the visionary and dynamic leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, is a confident and resurgent society. Its agenda for our centenary will be achieved through the 5 pledges that we committed to on our Independence Day. 1, we are resolved to make India a developed country in the next 25 years. For the world, that creates more capacities for global good. 2, we will liberate ourselves from a colonial mindset. Externally, this means reformed multilateralism and more contemporary global governance. 3, our rich civilizational heritage will be a source of pride and of strength. This includes care and concern for the environment, so ingrained in our traditional ethos. 4, we will promote greater unity and solidarity. This expresses a coming together on global issues such as terrorism, pandemics, or the environment. And 5, we will instill consciousness of duties and responsibilities. This applies to nations as much as it does to citizens. These 5 pledges affirm our age-old outlook that sees the world as one family. We believe that national good and global good can be entirely in harmony. It is this conviction that led us to supply vaccines to over 100 nations. Similarly, our evacuation operations in HADR situations always had room for other nationals in distress. Even as we meet our own development targets, India offers partnerships to our brothers and sisters in Asia, in Africa, and Latin America. And we do so based on their needs and their priorities. Today, the focus is on green growth, better connectivity, digital delivery, and accessible health. Our solidarity is not just in words. You can see them in 700 projects across the world. Madam President, even while India contributes to global betterment, we recognize the sharp deterioration in the international landscape. The world is already struggling with challenges of post-pandemic economic recovery. The debt situation of the developing is precarious. To this is now added the rising costs and the shrinking availability of fuel, of food, and of fertilizers. These, along with trade disruptions and diversions, are among the many consequences of the Ukraine conflict. The Indo-Pacific, too, witnesses fresh concerns about its stability and its security. And climate events have added an overlay on these mounting anxieties. As we saw in the case of the COVID pandemic, the South will be the most impacted, even if the immediate causes are well beyond. It is imperative that global conversations recognize this deep unfairness. The inequity of vaccine distribution should not be replicated in other domains. Madam President, as the Ukraine conflict continues to rage, we are often asked, whose side are we on? And our answer each time is straight and honest. India is on the side of peace and will remain firmly there. We are on the side that respects the UN Charter and its founding principles. We are on the side that calls for dialogue and diplomacy as the only way out. We are on the side of those struggling to make ends meet, even as they stare at the escalating costs of food, of fuel, and fertilizers. It is therefore in our collective interest to work constructively, both within the United Nations and outside, in finding an early resolution to this conflict. Excellencies, while the global attention has been on Ukraine, India has also had to contend with other challenges, especially in its own neighborhood. Some of them may be aggravated by the COVID pandemic and ongoing conflicts, but they speak too of a deeper malaise. The accumulation of debt in fragile economies is of particular concern. We believe that in such times, the international community must rise above narrow national agendas. India, for its part, is taking exceptional measures in exceptional times. We do so when we send 50,000 metric tons of wheat and multiple tranches of medicines and vaccines to Afghanistan. When we extend credits of $3.8 billion to Sri Lanka for fuel, essential commodities, and trade settlement. When we supply 10,000 metric tons of food aid and vaccine shipments to Myanmar. When we fill the gap in humanitarian needs left unaddressed by political complexity. Whether it is disaster response or humanitarian assistance, India has stood strong, contributing particularly to those nearest to us. Excellencies, the world as we knew it is poised for transformational changes. It has been impacted in recent times by a succession of shocks, each of them significant by itself. The COVID pandemic called into question the over-centralized nature of globalization and has led all of us to seek greater resilience and reliability of supply chains. The repercussions of the ongoing Ukraine conflict have further heightened economic stresses, especially on food and energy. Climate events have added to disruption that the world is already facing. As for the promise of technology, it has certainly multiplied our capabilities, but also added to our vulnerabilities. Trust and transparency are legitimate expectations of a more digitized world. The quest to create a better global order would necessarily have to address all these issues. Among them, some are clearly more existential in nature and necessitate intense coordination by the international community. Climate action and climate justice are particularly noteworthy in this respect. In their pursuit, India has worked with partners on the International Solar Alliance, the One Sun, One World, One Grid initiative, and the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. We stand ready to support any collective and equitable endeavor to protect our environment and to further global wellness. Lifestyle for environment, or LIFE, as declared by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Glasgow on the sidelines of COP26, is our homage to Mother Nature. India remains deeply committed to fighting climate change under the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement. We do so on the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities in the light of different national circumstances. We have announced our updated nationally determined contributions after COP26. Excellencies, India's steadfast commitment to South-South cooperation is by now well established and well recognized. Our approach is based on principles of mutual respect and national ownership, with a commitment to sustainable development for all. As we begin the G20 presidency this December, we are sensitive to the challenges faced by developing countries. India will work with other G20 members to address serious issues of debt, of economic growth, food and energy security, and particularly of environment. The reform of governance of multilateral financial institutions will continue to be one of our core priorities. Madam President, India would be completing its tenure as a member of the Security Council this year. In our term, we have acted as a bridge on some serious but divisive issues confronting the Council. We have also focused on concerns such as maritime security, peacekeeping, and counterterrorism. Our contributions range from providing technology with a human touch to ensuring safety and security of UN peacekeepers. As the chair of the Counterterrorism Committee this year, India would be hosting its special meeting in Mumbai and New Delhi. I invite all member states to participate in it. We need to create a global architecture that responds to the new tech tools deployed against open, diverse, and pluralistic societies. Having borne the brunt of cross-border terrorism for decades, India firmly advocates a zero-tolerance approach. In our view, there is no justification for any act of terrorism regardless of motivation, and no rhetoric, however sanctimonious, can ever cover up bloodstains. The United Nations responds to terrorism by sanctioning its perpetrators. Those who politicize the UNSC 1267 sanctions regime, sometimes even to the extent of defending proclaimed terrorists, they do so at their own peril. Believe me, they advance neither their own interests nor indeed their reputation. India has always espoused a cooperative, inclusive, and consultative approach to international relations. We believe that multipolarity, rebalancing, fair globalization, and reformed multilateralism cannot be kept in abeyance. The call for reformed multilateralism, with reforms of the Security Council at its core, enjoys considerable support among UN members. It does so because of the widespread recognition that the current architecture is anachronistic and ineffective. It is also perceived as deeply unfair, denying entire continents and regions a voice in a forum that deliberates their future. India is prepared to take up greater responsibilities, but it seeks, at the same time, to ensure that the injustice faced by the Global South is decisively addressed. Our call is to allow serious negotiations on such a critical matter to proceed sincerely. They must not be blocked by procedural tactics. Naysayers cannot hold the IGN process hostage in perpetuity. In these turbulent times, it is essential that the world listens to more voices of reason and experiences more acts of goodwill. India is willing and able on both counts. We believe and advocate that this is not an era of war or of conflict. On the contrary, it is a time for development and for cooperation. Madam President, in the past, this august assembly has served as a meeting point of views and as a catalyst for action. It is vital that we continue to believe in the promise of diplomacy and the need for international cooperation. Therefore, Madam President, let us strive to return to the course of seeking peace, progress, and prosperity. I thank you.
It's not often that I'm downright intimidated by the person I'm about to interview. Kristalina Georgieva, easy for lunch. But SRK is a legend, aren't you?
You're being very sweet, Richard. Like I told you, I'm not a legend. I'm Bond, James Bond. I told you that at the backstage. Yeah?
Say that again, go on. What's your name?
Bond, James Bond.
Would you like to play Bond?
I'd really wanted to, but I think I'm too short.
What about Bond Baddie?
Baddie, yes, of course. I'm brown enough.
If we look at your career, how many years?
Now, I think actively including television, 33 years now. I've been actively working as an actor.
But to have reached the level of stardom that you have reached, and for the length of time, is quite an achievement. It's more than that, it's a huge achievement. But it speaks to more than just, obviously, the raw talent, but it also speaks to perseverance, the ability to keep going, which is something that's so crucial.
I think it's, perseverance is, I think it happens to some people. You don't have any option but to persevere. So maybe when I was young, I lost my parents very early, and then you realize that, okay, there's no rewinding this, there's no coming back from death, and you have to continue, make the most of what you have. So I was kind of a youngish orphan, and I had to work my way through it. Or it could be just part of nature, it's the nature of the beast that you are just with dogged determination, you keep on working.
Where does that come from?
I don't know, I've always tried to analyze it, that, why do I do what I do? Why do I wake up in the morning and just start doing it all over again, even when it's... I think it taught me, the work that I do, making films, the result happens very suddenly. You think you've made the best of films, you think it's the nicest of stories to tell, you think the world is going to love it, and you wake up on a Friday morning and realize it's the biggest flop of your career. And you're like,
which happened?
Which happens more often than not. Or sometimes you don't like a film and that becomes the biggest hit of your career, and you say, like, how did this happen? But what I realized, and I want to say this to everyone actually, and I say this to everyone who's working with me or people who know me, that on Thursday evening, because our films release on Fridays mostly, or Thursday evenings here in Dubai, so Thursday evening at home in Mumbai, I rinse myself with a 2-hour bath and rinse myself of the work that I've done. Because what happens...
Well, hang on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that bath.
It's a ritual, yeah.
Is it a ritual? I mean, do you put special oils and scents? Do you have bath salts? Do you prepare with candles?
I'm not telling you my secret. You come and take a bath with me. Easy. I'm an actor. I'll show you how to do it.
Should I take him up on his offer? You carry on, sir.
Okay. No, but honestly, I do, because, I realize when you do a big hit film, it's done well and you're very happy and everybody's jumping around. Friday happens, Saturday happens, Sunday happens, and you realize this is a big blockbuster, but Monday I have to get back to work to make a better film. You made a flop film, Friday you're sad, Saturday you're crying, Sunday you're moping and you're not waking up from bed. Monday, you have to get back to work and start making a better film. So Mondays are for trying to make better films always, so you have to persevere.
Okay, but let me be crude. You don't need the money.
No, I need the money.
Oh, you do?
The bath oils are very expensive.
Fine. If you had to define the quintessential SRK film, what would it be?
I've said this before, I was telling you behind. I don't know when it happened, Richard, to be honest. I didn't realize it. I never wanted to be someone who's, like I say, peddling love or seller of dreams. I wanted to be an action guy with 8-packs and beat up people, be in a white vest, girl on my side with a Glock in my hand, and speak in baritone and things like that. But I never got the opportunity. I don't know. When I started off, suddenly everybody started to think of me as someone who's, promising hope, giving hope, and spreading love, like I spread my arms again and again. So I think my regular film would be a film that gives you hope, gives you goodness, gives you happiness, and at the end of it all, lots of good songs.
Yes, but you've also, there's a great YouTube video, 4 minutes of of your best entrances.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of action in them.
Yeah, only entries, no exits. I just keep entering again and again. My kids get very, when I have 3 kids, and whenever that video plays, and I have to tell you a secret, we've compiled it from the office. I think it looks just very cool. It's not made by others, we've made it. So whenever a show like this happens, and if you allow me to show a video here, we'll show you me just entering some places, and very dramatically and romantically. But my kids make a lot of fun of it. You know, whenever I get a little serious with them, they'll just look at me and say, oh my God, he's doing those entries from his video, S-R-K. So it does become a...
Do you want to give us an example?
Oh yeah, I can do that,
Yeah, I'm just,
you want to walk along?
With your permission, sir, we'll...
If it's okay, yeah?
Yeah, go on. Go on. Is there something you would not do? On screen?
On screen, I don't know, I wouldn't be... I'd like to give hope in my films. The stories that I tell, I hope they end with hope. I know I've done some really sad films also. I've done films which are tragedies. But somewhere down the line, I just hope that I can give hope in films. So I don't like to give hopeless cinema or hopeless stories, because I think in life and in businesses and in jobs and world, there's enough sadness.
So you're extremely well known here, obviously because of the Indian population that is here and elsewhere. But you like it here. You have a home. You are not a here today, gone tomorrow person for Dubai.
No. I spend a lot of time here. I have a beautiful house which has been given to me by Nakhil, and it's one of the nicest places in the world because nobody troubles me. And His Excellency the Prime Minister also just told me that he stays next to it. So the next New Year party is with him. He's a good neighbor, but it's really nice. I really enjoy being in Dubai. I really love being here.
And you find the juxtaposition with going back to Mumbai?
No, this is very easy. It's just 2.5 hours away.
Right.
So I keep dropping in. We come with the kids, and there's so much to do here. I'm sounding like the tourist ambassador of Dubai suddenly, right?
Everybody asks about crossover, and I'm no different. Because the more I researched you, the more I wondered. I mean, all right, supposedly 2011 DiCaprio never happened. Supposedly, allegedly, Slumdog Millionaire you turned down, allegedly. Why hasn't the crossover taken place? I don't see why it should. You're a big enough name in your own genre, but why has crossover not taken place?
I've said this honestly, but nobody believes it. So I'm going to say it to you very honestly. Nobody's ever offered me any work, crossover, of substance. I may have had conversations with people. I know lots of lovely people from the West, from the English film industry, from the American film industry. But nobody's offered me any good work. You know, I hear actors talk about, oh yes, I want to crossover, I want to take Indian cinema. I think I still have to learn how to be able to deliver to the audience that likes me. And, you know, instead of spreading myself too thin. And then, yeah, of course, if you've not been offered a job, how do you take it? So really, I've never been offered a film in Hollywood or in England. Yes, Slumdog was there, now that you mention it. And I spent a lot of time with Mr. Boyle, he's very sweet. But I was doing Who Wants to Be a Millionaire on television.
Successfully
at that time, and I just felt in the story that was being told, the guy who was hosting was very mean in the story that was being told, and I'm like, you know, I'm here doing Slumdog Millionaire, and the guys who were producing the show wanted me to do the film. I just found it, you know, this guy's, I was cheating and being dishonest as the host. So I just found that it's very strange that I'm being a host and I'm cheating in the film. So I explained to Mr. Boyle that I wouldn't like to do it, please. And they're way better actors than me. And I think Mr. Anil Kapoor did it, and he was fantastic as the host.
When the person's getting close to 1 million, well, the top in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, that moment, what do you feel?
Genuinely, when I was hosting it, I would hope they win it. I really hope they win it.
But I've done a quiz show myself, and there comes a point when you think, how close can I get to getting them to win it without
Yeah.
Did you know what I mean?
I always did that, when I was, because there's so many people from different parts of the country, and I really want them to win, and you do try to be a little helpful.
But you can't.
You can't, because the producer keeps shouting in your ears, don't, you've said enough, you can't talk about it. And unfortunately, the last 4 questions or the last 2 questions are extremely difficult, Suddenly they're thrown upon you, and you're like, oh my God, this person is not going to get the answer. And I feel really bad. And I try to think, I wish I had some hint, and I can't mislead the person by trying to give that hint, because I also mostly didn't know the answer.
So what is left that you have not done that you would like to do? And by that, I that's not a Hollywood question. That is a general, even within Indian films, within production, what still remains on your list?
So, Richard, when I started off, I just wanted to survive. Be able to get a week's work or a month's work or a year's work and say, okay, my films should do well. But as years have gone past, I think my whole job has become more and more motivated towards bringing in new technology into Indian film industry. I want to end my career, which is far from ending right now. I have another good 35 years to go. I really, really want to make that film which is loved by the whole world, and then nobody on a big stage like this asks me, why haven't you crossed over? That film should cross me over. That's my dream. I'd want you to learn Hindi and Urdu and Arabic to be able to understand that film.
Did you go on a massive retreat of personal introspection between 2018 and 2023? You just had 2 or 3 films that were not as successful. Suddenly he disappears, and everybody thinks, oh, he's licking his wounds, he's feeling sorry for himself, and then he comes back in 23 with 3 blockbusters. What was going on in that interim period?
So you're very kind. Yes, I had massive flops, and they did very, very badly. And I was doing all of that. I was licking my wounds. I was not in... you know what I did?
Yeah.
For 4 years?
Go on.
I've never said this to anyone, though I've mentioned it, but today, here, I'll tell everyone. I learned how to make the best pizza in the world. That's what I did. Honest to God. I stopped listening to stories. I stopped wanting to tell stories. I found myself and made myself a small kitchen, and I started learning how to make pizzas. And I learned what you asked me right to begin with, perseverance. Because to get the perfect pizza, it takes millions of square pizzas before you're able to make it completely round. So I learned perseverance, and I will make the best pizza in the world.
Can you?
No. I'm working on it. Next 4 years when you don't see me.
But was it a difficult moment when your wife and your family and everybody said, will you stop making pizza? Go back to work. Was it difficult to know now is the time to go back?
Yeah, actually, there was always a toss-up. I was very glad my family didn't tell me, listen, your pizzas are better than your films, stop making films. So I was glad they turned around and said, no, as good as your pizza is, I think your films are better. They were very encouraging, especially my children, my team, some of them are sitting here, and they said, okay, what you're going to do is tell stories. And I had become indulgent. I'd started becoming too innovative. I was looking for perfection, and I started failing. I needed to look for excellent, I needed to be unique, but I needed to look at the audience, what they want, and I'd stopped hearing the crowds. I used to go where there are thousands and lakhs of people waving at me, but I wouldn't hear or feel what they wanted to see of me. I was going there and waving, and I'm saying, whatever I make, I'll be innovative. So I did a film about a vertically challenged guy. I did a film about a manic, psychopathic fan, and I'm like, no, people just like to see me giving hope and happiness and love, so let's get back to that.
And as a result, the movies that you came back to make, and there were 3 of them last year, were huge successes. Therefore, that introspection clearly worked. That clearly did the trick.
Yes, mashallah. I think it just helped me realize that whatever you do, you have to do for the people or your consumers or your audiences. And yeah, it also made me realize one very main thing, that don't forget to pray. You have to pray and you have to get back to work.
Sir, I'm going to leave you with one. I'm sorry, I've forgotten. What was your name again? Your name is? Paul?
Bond. James Bond.
He's available for the offers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the office.
Today, we present a powerful speech by Palki Sharma, an esteemed journalist and thought leader, as she explores India's trajectory under Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership. With a focus on economic growth, digital advancement, and international diplomacy, Sharma provides a nuanced analysis of India's achievements and challenges. Join us to gain insights into the factors shaping India's future on the global stage.
Thank you, Mr. President. Namaskar and good evening to all of you. We're debating India's path tonight, and I could wrap my argument in one sentence borrowed from the White House. Go to New Delhi and see it for yourself. But I've been given more time than that, so I will tell you what I see. Earlier this week, I was on my way to the Delhi airport. There was a lot of traffic. At one point, the car stopped. On the roadside, I saw two vendors. One was selling fruit, the other was selling coconut water. What caught my attention was not what they were selling, but how they were selling it. Both had a QR code prominently displayed. And every single customer walked up to them, scanned this QR code, and paid for their purchase, every single one of them. To me, this is a picture of today's India. It shows three developments, three of the many developments I shall list out tonight. Number one is financial inclusion. Both the vendors had a bank account linked to their mobile phone. Number two is internet or mobile penetration, what we call digital India. It was 15% 9 years back. It's 48% today. And number three is the airport traffic. It just keeps swelling, even though we are at the receiving end. We see what it shows. From 67 million 9 years back to almost double now. To me, these things signify the path that India is on. The previous speakers have defined the motion well, but in case the evening drinks have kicked in, let me repeat. This House believes Modi's India is on the right path. And how do you determine if the path is right or wrong? You look at numbers, data, surveys, reports. I shall refer to all of these as I make my arguments. But I also want to dwell on something that's more personal, more important, I think, yet unquantifiable. I'm talking about the experience of living in today's India. I have lived in many Indias. The weary India where exciting policies and positions were abandoned. The self-doubting India, where decisions were taken based on global opinion. And today, a more confident India where the world comes for leadership and inspiration. You cannot put a premium on that. Indians are more prosperous at home and hence more confident abroad. Let me also tell you what I saw at the airport here in London, at the immigration counter. I saw Indians proudly flaunting their passport, none of the fidgeting or self-doubt of the last century. And if I may add, the immigration officer almost looked impressed. She was either a fan of India or just worried that she was holding up one of Rishi Sunak's relatives. We are proud of what we share with the world. Bollywood, masala chai, yoga, cricket. India today is a soft power giant. At the same time, India is not a timid democracy that tolerates terrorism or betrayals. When Pakistani terrorists attacked Kashmir's Pulwama, India carried out surgical strikes on Balakot. Today's India is not a pushover country. It's a world power denied. Today, invasions and colonialism are part of our history, not our identity. We are shaped by years of subjugation, not defined by them. We are excited about our global responsibilities, not wary of them. This change in confidence comes from growth at home. Which brings me to the numbers. I'll start with India's welfare state system and how it has fared in the past decade. 110 million new gas connections, 470 million bank accounts, 220 million insurance beneficiaries. And to be fair, the welfare concept is not new to India. It's been there for a while. What's new is the approach. It's not just about putting more money in the pocket, it's about empowering people. And the result, once again, the evidence shows in the numbers. India's per capita income has gone from 86,000 rupees in 2014 to 172,000 rupees now. It has doubled. And a big reason for that is the falling inflation, from more than 8% 9 years back to less than 6% today. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is in the middle of a global cost of living crisis. Foreign direct investment is at its highest level. Foreign trade is at its highest level. The growth mantra is connectivity. And I don't have to tell the British that. First thing you did in your colonies was build roads and railways. Our growth story has been about two Indias: the urban India, the bustling urban India, and a sluggish rural India. Today, we are trying to connect the two. We are building more than 38 kilometers of highway every day, which is 50% more than what it was 7 years ago. The number of airports has doubled since 2014. The total capacity at seaports has doubled. This connectivity is what is driving India forward. You mentioned GST. Our constitution calls India a union of all states, which is a great tribute to our diversity. But it also meant 28 different state economies, different taxes, different trade practices. This government tried to unify it to create a single Indian market. It took time, but the result is this today. Tax collection is at its highest ever. The number of taxpayers has doubled since 2017. I have a lot of data I could go on, but you get the drift. So now I'm going to talk about India's global position. Because your path is also about your role in the world. Are you a troublemaker or a consensus builder? I think there is no doubt as to where India stands. India is a member of the Quad and the SCO. India is invited to the G7, but is also a member of the BRICS. India rubs shoulders with the West, but also leads the global South. Which other country can claim to juggle these roles? And how does India do it? Because we are not trying to play an outsized role in the world, we are trying to play the right role. In the Russia-Ukraine war, India has not taken sides. And I know it confuses a lot of people here, but back home the thinking is very clear. It is not in our national interest to pick sides and make things worse. India has excellent relations with Russia and the West, and we want to preserve that. It's like when your two good friends fight. Do you pick sides and make things worse? Or do you try to talk sense to them and bridge the divide? I know what a good friend would do. I see what India is doing. India has always been, or always tried, to be a part of the solution, not the problem. Look at our neighborhood policy. When Sri Lanka was sinking, India provided assistance worth $4 billion, no strings attached, no grudges held, for Colombo's proximity with China. A lot of people say that India is losing control of South Asia. I say South Asia was never India's to control. New Delhi is building relations based on mutual respect and equality, and the results show beyond government interactions. Countries like Nepal and Bhutan are using India's online payment systems. Students from the neighborhood come to India for training, grants, and scholarships. This government has aced what we call Buddhist diplomacy. It is leveraging India's position as a cradle of Buddhism. All these initiatives have made India popular. The world stands with us against Chinese expansionism. The global South looks up to us for leadership. The global North looks up to us for partnership. I think that's the hallmark of great diplomacy and statecraft, when you're loved and respected in all quarters. More importantly, when you're trusted in all quarters. India repaid that trust during the COVID-19 pandemic. When the world forgot about morals and globalization, India sent 24 crore vaccines to 100 countries. And you saw the result of that in Papua New Guinea. When Prime Minister Modi landed there, their Prime Minister touched his feet. This was not a personal gesture to a leader. This was a vote of thanks to the entire country. Let's talk about domestic affairs. Kashmir was brought up. This government abrogated Article 370. Today, Kashmir's economy is doing much better. 1.8 crore tourists visited the valley in the last year. That's the highest ever in Indian history, 1.8 crore. Kashmir is getting its first ever foreign direct investment, and that too from a company in the UAE. But since this is Kashmir, let's not limit ourselves to finances. Let's talk about security. Terror attacks in the valley have almost halved in the last few years. The numbers are staring in your face. Security is better, economy is better, Kashmir is better. Plus, we have corrected a historical wrong imposed on India. Let me also address something else that was raised by the opposite side, and that is religious intolerance. It's easy to quote anecdotal evidence and paint an entire country as intolerant. But random elements and sporadic incidents do not speak for India or its leadership or its government. Only policies do, and I'll tell you about those policies. More Muslim students got scholarships in Modi's first term than the previous government. I'm talking about 2 million more Muslim students. If the idea was to marginalize them, why give them more scholarships? Look at the government's Hajj policy. Prime Minister Modi held personal talks with the Saudi regime to increase India's Hajj quota. In 2014, it was 136,000. By 2019, it was more than 200,000. Again, if the idea was to marginalize Muslims, why increase the Hajj quota? This government abolished triple talaq. Would you call it reform or repression? Let me also tell you what a Pew study found in 2021. It runs counter to every argument that will be made here tonight. It found that 89% of all Muslims and Christians in India say they're free to practice their religion. I'll repeat, 89% of all surveyed Muslims and Christians, but no, let's build on perceptions and anecdotes, not on facts. I would also point you to all the social schemes, the bank accounts, the gas connections, the insurance policies. They're available to all citizens of all religions. Does that mean India cannot do better? Absolutely not. Even one incident of marginalization is one too many, but how would you judge an entire country's path? In fact, it struck me when I was invited for this event, why would Oxford University be interested in debating the path of Modi's India? Because India has defied Western predictions. It's the world's largest democracy charting its own course. India today has shed the burden of trying to comply with Western constructs. No amount of lecturing or virtue signaling is shaking India's confidence, and that is what unsettles critics. There are hit-and-run experts with no accountability who make pronouncements based on their political leanings to create an anti-India narrative. GDP growth won't touch 5%. There was corruption in the Rafale deal. The government was snooping in opposition parties using Pegasus. All of these make for juicy headlines. And they make it look like everything is wrong in India. But when a Supreme Court investigation finds no wrongdoing, when India's growth crosses 7%, who is questioning these experts? When an 85% Hindu-majority Karnataka votes out the BJP, is the West then lauding India's secular credentials? You see, to judge a country's path, you have to be able to separate agenda-driven narrative from facts. In conclusion, let me say this. For any country in the world, there is always a wrong path. Enough dictators and autocrats have shown us, but there is no single right path. Britain has its own right path. India has its own right path. As long as democracy is respected, as long as the Constitution is respected, I would say to each their own. It is wrong to judge one country on the parameters of another. And that has been the beauty of India since 2014. We've uplifted 140 million people out of poverty. We did so while conducting free and fair elections, dozens of them. We did so while protesting, debating, and dissenting. And finally, I think the hallmark of a right direction is also public approval. Do the people think you're on the right path? The people of India answered that question in 2019. Thank you.
Today, we feature Mrs. Sudha Murty, an inspiring author and philanthropist, addressing a young audience at the Jamnabai Narsi campus in 2017. She shares personal stories and insights on the importance of discipline, hard work, and the value of education. Mrs. Murty emphasizes the power of choices in youth and debunks myths about generational differences. Join us for a session full of wisdom and guidance for students and educators alike.
Trustees, teachers, and my parents and my dear students. It gives me enormous joy for me to come to school than any other place for various reasons. A, I am a granddaughter of a school teacher. B, I am a daughter of a professor. C, I am the daughter-in-law of a school teacher. D, I myself am a teacher. I used to teach computer science in Christ University. And later I became so irregular than my own students. Then I said I will come on a management than a teacher because of my hectic schedules. Children give me enormous joy because they are innocent. And this is the first time I'm addressing any school in Bombay. I have not addressed any school in Bombay. I have come only for the... I have only come to Bombay for meetings, never to a school. So when there was an urgent meeting came down today evening, I have a 7 o'clock meeting, then I thought, why can't I come a little early? Anyway, I waste half a day in Bangalore traffic reaching airport. I rather leave at 5 in the morning, reach Bombay at 8:30 so that I can have a session with the students, and then I opted for this. I'll tell you a small story. I am a grandmother of 2 grandkids. Like today's how grandkids are there, they are like that, normal. Okay, that means more talking and less listening. And my granddaughter's name is Krishna, and she told me, they live in London. One day I told her to eat banana fruit. You know, we India consider it's a good fruit. Eat. And then she said, me, Ajji, give me she calls me Ajji, like any Kannada grandmother is called, or Maharashtrian grandmother is called. She said, Ajji, give me a set of reasons why one should eat banana, a 5-year kid. Okay? I said, okay, I will tell you a story, and then you feel like eating, you eat. I said, there was a rishi by the name Durvasa. I'm sure most of you know. Whenever he used to go to anybody's place, they used to get scared of him. Why this fellow has come, let him go as early as possible. I'm sure when you are not a nice person, nobody welcomes you. One day his wife told him, look, people, when you go, people run away. Whereas I stayed with you for such a long time, don't you think I deserve a boon or a special gift? First he was very upset. Then he said, okay, fine, I will give you a special gift. What do you want? She said, I want a fruit which is not grown in Devaloka or up above heaven, which is grown on the earth. Yet it should be used to worship God. B, it should flower once a year and it should not have any seeds. C, all parts of that tree should be used in cooking. D, it should give fruits only once in a year, and the fruit should be not messy kind, like not like a mango or apple. And such fruit, without giving that to God, the puja will be incomplete. He said, okay. He made a tree and gave the fruit to the God, and then he called that, her name was Kadali, so he called that fruit the Kadali Phala. Kadali in Sanskrit became banana in English later. So whatever banana tree you see, that is the intelligence of a woman who told her husband the kind of fruit which is easy to eat, whose leaves are used for eating, whose bark is in the stem is used in cooking, whose flower is used in a cooking, which flowers once a year, and there are no seeds. So I told, it's such a great fruit on the earth. If you don't want to eat Krishna, you don't have to eat. But only learned people eat this one. What I'm telling you is, though every generation, it's really wrong to tell that our generation has a lot more stress. That is totally wrong. Parents, please remove it from your head in case you have such things. I was in Egypt about 15 years back. Then I took on Egyptology, that is a person who knows how to read hieroglyphy, who knows more about Egyptian history, and went to one place which is 7,000 years old, and there I saw the pyramid. Inside the pyramid there was hieroglyphy, so I asked that fellow, what it is written here, you tell me. This fellow told me, the builder of Egypt pyramid have written about next generation. Next generation doesn't respect time, doesn't respect money, doesn't respect elders. They have less common sense, they are less hardworking. I really do not know how they will survive. Suddenly I felt like, my parents talking to me like that. Every generation feels next generation is less than ours. We are very hardworking, we talk. No, that is really not true. Every generation has their own plus and minus, some totally same. Any mathematics teacher or any students who love mathematics will appreciate this. What is 1 by 2? Half. 1 by 2 is 2 by 4. It is also equal to 3 by 6. It's also equal to 4 by 8. It's also equal to 16 by 32. The moment I say 1 by 2 and 16 by 32, 16 is a huge number, 1 is small, but the ratio remains the same. And that is the way every generation has their own plus, minus, their own strengths. I have seen my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother and me, and my daughter, 7 generations I have seen. They were always worried about disease because if there was no antibiotic in those days. If the child gets fever, the mother would have been panicked. Today you go to a pediatrician. In those days it was not there. Next generation I have seen there was no connectivity. Coming to Bombay is once in lifetime, particularly from people from Karnataka. Every generation undergoes a different stress, but they do undergo stress. Now coming to this topic, they told me that you have to address parents. I said I wanted to address students actually, but if parents are interested, I can. But students may get bored. I want to tell something to students and then I'll address parents. Students, you should understand one thing. When you are in school, somebody looks after you. Your teacher, your parents look after you. They will tell you some good words and you really get bored. When they start sermon, your mind goes away somewhere. Because I was also a student once upon a time. Too many things that someone tells you, then you won't like it, actually. You won't like it. And too many things we should not tell also. If we want to tell parents, you should always tell in the form of a story. Never tell directly. You should be hardworking. As a child, you may not like it. But please remember, people who care for you only will tell. Third person will not tell. Please don't underestimate your parents and your teachers. It's your duty to understand what they are telling, for what reason they are telling. And you have to actually accept it. And later it will pay its price later part of your life. What you don't learn now will never be learned later. It is always false ideas. When I grow big, I will do. I don't know how many of you have read my book, The Story of Portado. Portado is a real life story. Portado was my classmate. He was reasonably bright, maybe very bright, I suppose. Never came to school, never came to college. I was in engineering college. He used to stay, he was from Goa. He used to come, he was in the hostel and he never used to come to college. Our college was 7 to 11, he will come around 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, earliest mean 9 o'clock. And he will sit here, sit there, attend 2 classes. After that, afternoon he will come for the lab, etc. End of the year, 1 month he will get up early and he will study. And there is a method in college. You take question papers, April and October. Whatever comes in October will never come in April. Okay? I'm sure in the school also you have. Midterm will never come to final. Okay? So eliminate these question answers and then make a approximate question paper and study that, and he used to get a first class. He did all 4 years like this. Once I asked Portado, why you are such a bright person? You don't come to class. If you come regularly, you can get distinction. You can get a rank. He said, Sudha, you do not know. In life, it is not the education. It is the connection it really works. And we have to build a lot of connections. When you are young, it helps you. I came from a middle-class family. My father was a doctor, a gynecologist. I never understood this connection, all those things. Then he said, my father was in military. We were in Calcutta. There was a club, which we have never seen in our real life. So we thought maybe he's a big man. Years passed. In 1972, I finished my engineering, so was Portado, and I didn't meet him for a long time. After 35 years, I think 2008 or 9, I had been to Dubai to deliver a lecture. And when the lecture was over, I saw somebody waiting for. And then he said, ma'am, I was waiting for you. I was surprised, a place like Dubai, who will wait for me? Then he said, I'm Portado. I could not recognize because in 30, 40 years, people put on weight, your hair will be gray. All those physical changes will happen. So I said, Portado, I would not have recognized. I was very happy. I told him, let us sit down and talk. He said, no, I just wanted to tell you one word to you. So I was waiting. I said, what happened? He said, do you remember in college I used to bunk class? I said, of course I remember you. Portado means bunking class. He said, I used to bunk class and I joined a job. And because in those days, the moment you have BE, you used to get a job in my time. And my bosses came to know that, my subordinates came to know that I don't have knowledge. Getting a first class marks are different than knowledge. Please remember, parents, your children should be in the pursuit of knowledge than the marks. Though it's a competitive examination. I agree. It is a competitive world. It is a competitive world. Competition is 1,000 times or 10,000 times more than what time I had. But with all those things, the knowledge which always helps you than your marks in real life. So he said, I got marks, but I did not have knowledge. Once the subordinates know that you don't have knowledge, they don't respect you. Once the boss knows you don't have knowledge, then he wants a reason to kick you out. I was kicked out from one job, then I took a second job, and I was so much used to getting up 9 in the morning, I'll go late to the office. I was kicked out there also. Over a period of time, I couldn't get job anywhere. And now I have a job as a manager job or a smaller job in Dubai. And I said, what about your family? He said, I have 2 daughters. I left them in Chennai to study. I said, what? He said, yes, I want they should study well. They should not become like me. I just waited for you to tell Sudha one thing. When we were young, I used to make fun of you. He used to tell me, you are like a running race horse, because the horse will see neither left nor right, it runs. So anyway, you always were academic and we used to make fun of you. Today, when we called you nerd, and I thought I was very smart, today I feel you are successful and I wasted my life. I just wanted to tell you, if you don't discipline when you are school or in college, you pay a heavy price in later part of your life. Discipline, like coming up in a proper way, writing properly, talking properly, communicating properly, respecting people properly. This really helps a long way in your life. So I don't want you should be like Portado, regretting in your old age. You should remember that to be successful in life, there is no shortcut. The only method is hard work and straight way. And that you have to do. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to address both of you. And in case you have any questions, in my limited knowledge, and my answers are highly subjective. Okay? It is not, from any group theory I have taken. I will try to answer. Thank you once again.
Visit our site, EnglishSpeechChannel.com, for exclusive access to video transcripts, offline audio, English lessons, and private classes. Don't forget to explore our free and new ebooks. Also, subscribe to our weekly newsletter for the latest updates. Links in the description below. Thanks for your support.